Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bases Loaded. I'm Blake Munroe, where I'm joined by Jeff Howe. CJ's absent today, Jeff, but we're still going to get into a little baseball, specifically SEC baseball today. But before we do that, I want to rewind just a little bit. Texas now 14-1, their best start in 20 years. But we saw a change this past Sunday when Volantis was on the mound. I want to go back to that moment and get your thoughts on how the true freshman did.
We've been hearing about this freshman pitching group pretty much since they got to campus. And Volantis is an interesting story. He was headed to USC, backed out of that commitment, and then ended up at Texas. And he was one of those guys kind of like Drew Rarick. If he'd have made himself, 100% available, he'd be playing pro ball somewhere right now.
Yeah.
But wanted to play in college. And, I like what they've gotten from this group. And it was interesting talking to Schloss about it on Thursday because I asked him just to reiterate because, I know he talked about freshman pitchers earlier in the year, but now that he's seen some of these guys, how has it changed their view on how to use pitchers? And he said, if you look at the SEC, a lot of your freshmen don't even pitch on weekends. He said it just depends on if they're your best pitchers. And he talked about when he was at A&M and, they used Prager a lot his freshman year, and he kind of got worn down toward the end of the year. So I think they're trying to be really smart with how they use these guys. Like if you notice, Jason Flores was the Tuesday guy, then Drew Rarick ends up getting a Tuesday start.
Yep.
So I think they're just trying to make sure these guys, especially early on, don't get stretched out too much because Blake will talk about it here in a minute. Man, every weekend's going to feel like a super regional pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to start this weekend, going to Duty Noble to play Mississippi State. Starkville's not an easy place to play, but this schedule is going to be really fun to watch from the outside. But going through it, man, like I said, every weekend's going to feel like you're getting ready for a super regional. So how they stagger these freshmen and use them and determine, what innings you're going to throw. Are you going to throw high leverage innings late in games, whatever? Just monitor that because at this point, I think it's pretty clear that between Flores and Volantis, and we'll see what Rarick does, your freshmen will probably be some of your best arms. So chances are you'll need those guys when the postseason comes around.
Definitely. And, talking about the freshmen, Jeff, I actually wanted to get your input on this as well. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of coaches will be conservative playing those true freshmen, starting those true freshmen especially. But Sloss doesn't seem to have a problem. I mean, obviously these kids are talented. He's putting them out there, but it's definitely interesting how much confidence he seems to have. Not only him, but Max Weiner as well has in these freshmen, putting them out there and giving them starts right off the bat. I mean, we're still pretty early in the season.
Yeah. With Volantis going to the Sunday roll, we've seen a lot of Flores. We're starting to see more Drew Rarick. We're starting to see more Bryce Navarre. So I think you can kind of what you've been talking about, Blake, all off season, right? Like it was pretty clear early on that Volantis was probably ahead of that group. Flores was right there with him. And then, it was Rarick and Navarre kind of in that order. And that's really kind of how their usage has gone this year. So you just hope with Volantis, especially that he doesn't hit that wall and just it gets overused. But at the end of the day, man, I couldn't be happy. This freshman pitching group was really, really hyped coming in, and so far they lived up to it. You can see, man, these guys have great stuff, and I just like the confidence that they take the mound with. Max Blue and Jalen Flores both mentioned that on Thursday when they were talking about Volantis. Jared Spencer mentioned it too, just like the kid believes anytime he toes the rubber, he's going to strike everybody out. Like he just is not afraid to attack the strike zone. And it's pretty clear if you can't throw strikes, you're not going to pitch for Max Weiner and Jim Schlossnagle. But the fact that, again, that Max Weiner's done a really good job of explaining what he wants, the approach, the mentality, you're starting to see some development in that pitching staff. So even though it's still early, some really good signs, Blake, from what we've seen, not just from the arms and the talent and the stuff, but the growth we've seen from some of these guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm excited, Jeff, speaking of growth, I mean, to see what they look like later in the season, assuming everything holds up, and even in the next year or two to come. I mean, it's going to be pretty dang interesting for sure. Well, as we do every week, Jeff, let's take a look at the weekly rankings. Of course, Perfect Game still holding pat at number 6 like they have all year. They haven't had to change anything as far as Texas. USA Today Baseball America both have Texas at number 9, and then the NCBWA at 10, and D1 Baseball at 11. But as we said last week, Jeff, these numbers, we had that big range. We're getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Yeah, and I think in some respect, Blake, you kind of have to have Texas in the top 10. Just when you've won 14 in a row, you got to respect that. I don't care what competition you're playing against. In college baseball, that's really hard to do. So you got to have them up there. But look, this stuff will get sorted out in the next few weeks because, like you see, you open conference play in Starkville. The number 1 team in the country is coming to Dish Falk next weekend. So it's about to get real. So we're really going to figure out here pretty quick exactly how this team stacks up.
Oh, for sure. And, you alluded to it at the beginning, but let's talk about the SEC. Obviously, they're going to start with Mississippi State. As you said, it's a road game. So, you get that test right out of the gate, So, but Mississippi State coming into this one 13-4, as we said, Texas 14-1. What would you say would be a successful weekend at Mississippi State when we're looking back on Monday? Besides, obviously, going 3-0.
Yeah, I just think the test for your 2 frontline starters, Jared Spencer's been the Friday guy, right? It's been a new role for him. How does he approach being a Friday night guy in the SEC? Does he let that get to him, and do we see him press and do things he hasn't done? Or does he just kind of settle in, be even keel, and we see the same Jared Spencer that we've seen by and large, through the first month of the season? I'm hoping we see the same Jared Spencer, but, Blake, you never know how guys are going to react. And, I think the good thing with him, though, specifically is, in his time at Indiana State, those are really good Indiana State programs. So he's pitched in super regionals. He's pitched at Vanderbilt. Yeah. He's pitched at Kentucky. So it's not completely foreign to him going to pitch in an SEC ballpark. So, and then Luke Harrison, just I'm amazed at the work they've done with him. And, we could see in 2022 that he had arm talent. But, coming back off of Tommy John and where he is now, can your frontline guys be frontline guys? And the other thing we got to mention too, Blake, the weather could have a really big say in how this series goes, because even Schloss admitted on Thursday, and we're seeing the forecast as we get closer to it. He's like, it doesn't look promising to get that game in on Saturday, assuming, Friday is one game, which as we're sitting here recording right now, that's still the plan. If they don't play Saturday, it's going to be 2 7-inning games on Sunday.
Yeah. And that's tough, man.
As much as we talked about Volantis, Volantis could start that game, or they could decide, hey, depending on who gets used in the bullpen on Friday and in that first game on Sunday, depending on who's available, it could be, hey, all hands on deck. And to win a series or to get a sweep, maybe you're just trying to, or hopefully you're not trying to salvage from being swept. Hopefully you're just trying to, hey, can you give us an inning? Can this guy give us an inning in a third, whatever? And you really just kind of got, it's Johnny Holstaff at that point. So the weather could, hopefully it doesn't, but it could be a really big player this weekend. Schloss, that's why you're still seeing it, Blake, if you pull the graphic up on the starters for this weekend, that's why you're still seeing Sunday TBA. If they get the Saturday game in, Schloss said it's most likely to still be Volantis. But if it's 2 7-inning games, I don't even think him and Max Wiener, as of Thursday, I still don't think they knew, or at least they weren't ready to say publicly what they were thinking about doing.
Yeah, without a doubt. And as you said, I'm going to pull it up here. My apologies. But TBA, and then, of course, Spencer and Harrison, as we've seen. But I'm with you, man. I mean, the weather is going to play such a crucial role in this. And it don't matter how much depth you have, how much talent you have, Jeff. We both know when you're playing 2 7-inning games back-to-back in the same day, I mean, that's tough for any team. It doesn't matter at what level, what you're ranked, what you're I mean, it's just tough, man. That's a lot of baseball.
But I do like the fact that with your position players that they've been able to get Casey Borba in the lineup, and he's found himself, that outfield mix. You're really 4 now with Winfield, Gasparino, Ballou, and Tommy Farmer. We've seen Cole Chamberlain getting in there. Good news is Schloss said he expects Rylan Galvan to be back behind the plate all weekend. So that's good news. So all things considered, Blake, that was one of my big things before the season started. How are you gonna, what's your depth situation gonna look like by the time you get to conference play? And we've seen it. You've got a 4th outfielder. You've got your utility infield guy in Borba, and then Chamberlain, who He can DH, he can play first, he can be behind the plate. So you've got 3 reserves right now that we've seen play some high leverage innings.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, before we talk a little more about the SEC, Jeff, I want to tell everybody about our sponsor today, Chinook Seedery. You've heard me say all baseball season to go check them out, whether you're at the game or maybe just watching the game on your couch. They have 8 different flavors to choose from. Jeff's a cinnamon toast guy. I'm a lemon pepper guy. But if you don't like either one of those other 6 will fit you right. Check them out in your favorite store or order online at chinookseedery.com. I want to thank them for sponsoring Bases Loaded all baseball season. And, man, let's talk about the SEC because you're going to start out. We'll use the Baseball America poll for this discussion here because they got a pretty graphic, Jeff. So I picked them. But, you're going to start out at number 22 on the road, Jeff. You're going to play 10 SEC teams this season. 7 of those 10 are ranked in the top 25. We're not even talking about the dang SEC tournament at the end of the season. Right now, off the week 4 poll, 12 SEC teams in the top 25. So just under 50%. Man, if that's not a grind, I don't know what is. Texas right now, using the graphic we have on here, going to play number 22, followed by number 2, 7, 21, 3, 6, and 8. So, I mean, you have 5 top 10 teams on your SEC slate, not counting the tournament that you're going to play at the end of the year. That's crazy to me, Jeff.
Yeah. So having the win over Ole Miss on a neutral field is really nice when, our RPI starts getting factored into this thing. It's just like we've seen it. To put it in perspective, we're talking about the historic year in men's basketball with, if Texas gets into the tournament, that'll be 14 SEC teams. 14 of the 16 will be in the field of 68. That's every year in baseball in the SEC. Yeah. So this is, hey, we're all excited about football. Everybody was excited about Texas going to compete in the SEC in football. But this right here, Blake, this is when the SEC announcement came down and we knew it was going to happen. This is what I was waiting for. This is what I was licking my chops for because I'm like, man, every weekend is going to be massive. And, like I said, to show you the strength of the league, I said the number 1 team's coming into Dish Fog next weekend. Okay, LSU's number 1 in the D1 poll. Baseball America's got Tennessee at number 1. So anyway you slice it, the SEC's got the top 3 teams in the country. So, it's a lot of SEC in that top 25. But it's good to see Texas in there, and hey, look, look. Everybody, we even saw it in the Big 12. We're going to see it in this league. And if you followed the SEC, you've seen it. Even that LSU team with Paul Skeens that won a national championship, they had a stretch where, they had lost a few games.
Yeah.
Every team is going to have that week or two where you just don't play well. You're not hitting or you're not pitching. Your defense isn't great. Whatever it is, it's can you pile up the wins before you hit that slump? And can you pick yourself back up coming out of it? That's the teams that ultimately end up in the top quarter of the league, and those are going to be your teams in the mix for top 8 seeds come tournament time.
And, Jeff, I got to correct myself on the fly here because I forgot Kentucky. So make that 8 of those 10 teams are ranked in the top 25 currently, and 13 of the top 25 are SEC teams. So, you look at that. 80% of your conference foes are top 25 opponents. And you don't have to put a number on it, an exact number, but what would make that a successful conference season in your eyes?
If you go 500 or better in the league, you had a really good year.
I'm with you.
Really, really good year. Like I said, I don't know yet that, I know Tennessee's won in that Baseball America poll. Like I said, LSU's number 1. At least so far, I haven't seen a team that looks like Tennessee last year or LSU 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I haven't felt like there's that one dominant team yet. Yeah. So we'll see. Does somebody emerge? And you know what, Blake, honestly, why can't it be Texas? As diverse as they are offensively to score runs in a multiple way they can score runs, if the pitching is there, then, and I always like, Schloss has inherited this from David Pierce. By the time you get to Sunday, if you've split the first 2 or you've won the first 2, in other words, you got a chance to win a series or sweep it on Sunday, man, they're going to eat your number 3 starter in the back end of your bullpen, dude. This offense will eat you alive. So I like it's going to be really tough. Texas will be a tough out in a 3-game series. So why can't it be Texas? I mean, it might be, but dude, it's, Duty Noble, that they take baseball real seriously at Mississippi State. Obviously, remember in 2021, those teams, other than the blowout in Arlington at the beginning of the year, those teams played 3 pretty memorable games in Omaha.
Yeah,
and that was, for all intents and purposes, that was your national championship series that year.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it was Texas and Mississippi State, and it was fun. It wasn't so fun to watch Mississippi State walk it off in that winner take all semifinal, but they take their baseball seriously down there. They've got tradition. You think back in the when they were playing in bandboxes back in the 80s with Will Clark and Rafael Palmeiro, all the way going up to that championship team. They'll put 10,000 in there. They'll be firing up the grills out in the outfield, and it's going to be rowdy. But again, that's everywhere you go. That's Fayetteville. That's Baton Rouge. Yes. It's Knoxville. It's everywhere in this league. So this is going to be fun, man. Anybody that's going down to Starkville, that's going to be a blast this weekend. So I can't wait. I'm so looking forward. We've seen Texas and LSU mix it up in baseball, whether it's been the one-off midweeks or they've had a home and home a couple years ago, or Minute Maid. That game I was down there at Minute Maid, they put 25,000 in there in Minute Maid on a Saturday night. My whole thing though, Blake, is now it's a conference series. So the fact that you can have these two in a 3-game series every year, I can't wait. I'm so freaking pumped for SEC baseball.
What you're saying is it means more, right? It just means more.
Man, Greg Sankey's got so much mileage out of that thing, dude, but it really does, man. It really does.
Oh, I'm excited too. I mean, no offense to Big 12 schools, but going to LSU, Arkansas, just take your pick there, Vandy, whatever it may be. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, whatever. I mean, the atmosphere surrounding those programs and the stadiums there is so much better than going to Lawrence, for example, or, wherever it may be. I mean, and again, no offense to the Big 12 schools, but it is what it is. I'm excited. For the road
UCF last year. Yeah, there's just not much of an appetite for baseball. And, I think to put the league into perspective too, from from how Schloss views it, Schloss could have stayed at TCU and retired and, hung it up there and had a great tenure. But, he said he was talking about this on Thursday. He said when he made the decision to go to A&M, it had a lot to do with, I don't want to end my career without challenging myself in this league, seeing if I can do it. And that's why he calls it the major leagues of college baseball, man, because it is not just with the pros you're going to face every weekend, but man, it is. I know I'm repeating myself, but man, if you've been to a super regional, every weekend series in this league is going to feel like you're competing in a super regional.
Yeah.
And Blake, you've sat in the stands for a super regional. You've been to super regionals. I've been to super regionals. It's one of those, man, where you are hanging on every single pitch, every momentum swing. It's tense, but I know it's got to be hell on coaches and players, and probably not good for your long-term health. But I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready to sink my teeth in.
Hey, it's well worth taking a few months off your life in the long run, All right, man. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Bases Loaded. Want to thank Chinook Seedery for sponsoring. Jeff and I will be back next week along with CJ. So we'll see you then.